Planning to cross the border with your RV? Get ready for an epic adventure with tips on preparing for international travel, must-see destinations in Canada and Mexico, and navigating rough roads like the Alaskan-Canadian Highway. Plus, the latest RV news and RV pro tip you don't want to miss. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Restless Nomads, the ultimate RV show for modern-day rubber tramps and weekend warriors alike. Whether you're chasing sunsets full-time, savoring seasonal escapes, or just hitting the road for a quick weekend getaway, this is your go-to show for tips, tricks, and tales from the road. Join us as we dive into everything RV, choosing the right rig, surviving life on wheels, and navigating the highs and lows of life on the move. From towables to motorhomes, budget hacks to campsite secrets, we've got you covered. So buckle up, nomads, and let's hit the road to adventure, 1 mile at a time. Well, welcome back. This week's episode of The Restless Nomads. It's Mike with you. Check us out on therestlessnomads.com. That's our travel blog. You'll find all of our episodes posted there, as well as some useful information for all you RVers out there. And see Angie and I's latest adventure. All right, so the RV news update. There's a new RV border crossing apps, actually a couple of them, a new wave of smartphone apps aimed to help RVers plan border crossings with real-time updates on wait times, border policies, and even a document checklist. Two apps that come to mind, CrossCheck and Roadbound, could make border hops a little less stressful. Also, Canada is upgrading campsites to accommodate larger rigs. Canada Parks has announced plans to expand more sites to fit larger RVs and fifth wheels, especially in popular spots like Banff and Jasper. The upgrades will also include more electrical hookups and better Wi-Fi. The Alaska Ferry System is lowering their prices for RV transport with travel demand rising. The ferry system is offering special discounts for RVers who book round-trip transport. Now, if you book a job up there, if you happen to score a job in Alaska, many times that company will reimburse you so long as you stay for the duration of the season. If you quit and leave early, that will be on you. All right, let's dive right into it. So today's show is all about international RVing. You know, many of us travel around the United States, and there's a lot to see in the United States. You could probably spend 10 or more years traveling from state to state, and you still wouldn't see everything. But it can be pretty exciting to broaden your horizons a little bit more and cross the borders into Canada and Mexico. There's a lot to see in those places, too. For example, in Mexico, especially during the wintertime, it's a great way to enjoy some sunshine and adventure simultaneously. Baja California offers beautiful beaches, vibrant culture, and some awesome boondocking spots right on the beach. Also, Copper Canyon down in Mexico is a little lesser-known gem, and that's actually deeper than the Grand Canyon. The Yucatan Peninsula has a rich history, lots of museums, and beautiful coastlines, as well as ancient ruins to check out. Up in Canada, Banff and Jasper National Parks are unparalleled in beauty, with glacial lakes and rugged peaks. Also, Icefields Parkway is one of the most scenic drives in the world. And Prince Edward Island has some coastal charm and iconic red sand beaches. So lots to see. It is on our bucket list. Angie and I definitely want to cross over into Canada and camp in Canada. And we'd also like to go down into Mexico. One thing that we have thought about is going to southern Arizona and camping on this side of the border and then crossing over just with a truck into Mexico. At least for the first time, that would be a relatively easy thing to do, and we could go explore some of the border towns there. So important things to think about when you cross any border, whether you're in an RV or not, is your passports. You need to make sure that you are current on those, and they need to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your planned stay. So if you have a passport that's getting ready to expire, they expire once every 10 years, you need to get yourself down to the post office and get that renewed. If you're applying for a passport for the first time, you'll go through your post office and you'll fill out an application. And get this, this is the crazy thing. If you haven't done a passport in a while, or maybe it's your first passport, when you go to the post office with your appointment, you have to set up an appointment online to submit your application. And they don't take copies of your original documents, like your birth certificate and your driver's license. They take the actual copies, or the real thing, and they send those off in the mail to the passport processing center. So that means that if you have any reason to use those documents, like a new job or something like that, you need to plan around that, because you're going to be without your birth certificate and without your driver's license even for a little bit. And I thought that was absolutely insane. You would think that the person behind the counter could say, yes, I verified that this is real, take a photocopy and send it off. But that is not the case. They take your real documents and you are just without them until you get them back in the mail 6 to 8 weeks later. So plan for at least 2 months of not having your documents. And I know I was sweating it when we did it a couple years ago when we got our passports, because I was afraid that they would lose our documents in the mail. And they're sending everything, all the proof that you're an American goes in the mail, and can be a little bit nerve-wracking. I think they should work on that and make that system a little bit better. There's too many things that can go wrong with that. Also, if you're crossing the borders with a vehicle like an RV, you need to make sure you have your vehicle registration current and also have your proof of insurance. Now, when you get into that country, in Canada and Mexico, this isn't so much of an issue. They'll take your American registration generally. But if you were to ship your vehicle overseas to a different country that is not bordered with us, they may require you to register that vehicle in that country. Just keep that in mind. And then you also want to check your travel visa requirements. Each country has their own rules about how long you can stay there. And many times they will ask you why you're there. Of course, if you're in an RV, you're likely there for vacation purposes, holiday purposes, but maybe you have a job in that country and you may even need to apply for a work visa. Another thing to consider when you're traveling to another country, and this is true of RVs as well as just going to another country in general, is you need to know how long you can drive on your United States driver's license without having to apply for and get a driver's license in that country. I think, if I remember correctly, when we went over to Europe, I think it was like 2 weeks or something. So you could fly to Europe and rent a car and drive around legally on your United States license. But if you were going to be there for more than 2 weeks consecutively, I think you actually had to get a European or a UK driver's license, if I'm not mistaken. So important to research that and have a plan. Also, when you're traveling abroad, whether in your RV or anywhere really, you need to make sure that you are covered with your medical insurance, because there are some medical insurances that if you get hurt and you are not in the United States, you will not be covered. So think about that. Another important thing is to make sure that your cell phone plan is up to date and it's going to allow you to make calls and access data internationally. Most of the cell phone plans, the regular ones here in the United States, will cover Canada and Mexico. If you're traveling over to Europe, then you need to research that, and you could, I know when we went to Europe, we had to purchase data and phone time, in order to be able to use those cell towers in Europe. And if you're going to be venturing down into Mexico or up way north into Canada, where there are fewer cell towers, pretty much anywhere in the world where there are fewer cell towers and there's more distance between the cell towers, it's a good idea to download those offline maps on your GPS. Most people use their phones these days, but get on it right now and download those maps ahead of time. That way, when you are smack dab in the middle of two cell towers and they're 200 miles apart, you can still navigate. If you don't want to purchase data, which I think it's kind of a requirement for travelers these days, it sure makes life a lot easier, but you can always rely on your Wi-Fi hotspots and make sure that if you are bringing along your own Wi-Fi hotspot, like Starlink is good pretty much around the world, although they do have some nuanced requirements for that. So check in with that and ensure that you will have connectivity wherever you're going. Also, if you have like a Verizon Cube or AT&T hotspot, you want to make sure that you will be able to use that in the country that you're going to, or have a plan to be able to access the internet without it. So crossing the border when you're driving, some important things to remember. What you can't bring. Good idea to leave the firearms and the ammo at home, especially when you're crossing international borders into Canada and into Mexico. That is 100% of the time going to be a no-go. No firearms, no ammo. Now, you have to consider this for crossing state lines, too. I know with it, if you have an Oregon concealed carry permit and you're carrying concealed in Oregon, and then like here in Klamath Falls, we are not far from the Oregon-California border. So if we cross into California, that's something that we have to think about. We got to pull over before we cross into California and make sure that we get California legal. So putting the glove in a locked glove box, or the gun in a locked glove box, and putting the ammo in the trunk or something like that. Just like we can't bring fresh fruit into California, fresh produce and meats are often confiscated at international borders, Mexico and Canada. So good idea to go ahead and at your last campsite before you cross into Canada or Mexico, have a big dinner and eat all of that. And as soon as you get over into the country you're going to, you can stock up once again and be good to go. Another thing, if you are a tobacco user or an alcohol user, you need to know the limits or just avoid it altogether and do not bring those items into the bordering country, because that's going to get into duties and everything else. So important things to think about. Now, when you get to the border, they very likely will ask you for your documents, and they'll ask you, do you have any firearms? Do you have any produce or meats? Do you have any alcohol or tobacco? The easiest way to get through is they just ask the questions, you say no, and they let you through. But they are totally within their rights to board your RV and go through everything to make sure that you're telling the truth. So keep that in mind. It's possible that you may be pulled out of line and searched, and so you want to be on the up and up because you don't want to have to turn around. That can be a major issue, especially if you have reservations in that country starting that night, right? So it will certainly throw a wrench in your travel plans, and you want to avoid it. Okay, well, after the break, we'll get into some other international interesting stuff. We'll talk about the Alcan. We'll talk about shipping your RV if you're wanting to go to different countries that you cannot drive into, and much more right here on the Restless Nomads RV radio show on Gold Country Radio. We'll be right back. Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally, and beyond. You're listening to the Restless Nomads RV radio show on Gold Country Radio and heard around the world with the Broadcast to Podcast campaign. Check out the origin of this broadcast. It's on Gold Country Radio, originally live, and you can check us out at goldcountryradio .org. I'm sorry, goldcountryradio.org to see other community shows like Make It Out Alive, also The Life Outdoors, Hunting Southern Oregon, Terrible at Fishing, Fishing Tips and Tricks, lots of community shows that may be of interest if you are enjoying the Restless Nomads RV radio show. Okay, let's get into one of the main reasons that people may cross a border, especially the Canadian border. If you're going to cross the Canadian border, most people are heading up there to hit the Alcan en route to Alaska. And the Alcan is one of the biggest bucket list journeys for adventurous RVers, but it has its unique challenges. Some things to think about. The Alcan is historically known for its really rough roads, so just be prepared for thousands of miles of potholes, frost heaves, gravel sections. You need to be planning for weather. There's a sweet spot, because they do maintenance on the road. There's kind of a sweet spot when the road construction is almost done before the winter season, essentially. So August, September might be a good time to head up there, but you also need to think about getting back, and you don't want to be caught in the weather and not be able to get back on the Alcan. Fuel and supplies are really, really limited on the Alcan, and you have to think about that. Gas stations can be up to 100 miles apart, so you do not want to be riding around with a quarter tank and that's all the fuel that you have. Most people that do the Alcan actually take cans of fuel with them just in reserve for emergencies. They take plenty of water with them just in case your vehicle overheats or you end up breaking down and you need to drink that water. Take some food, take all of those emergency supplies. Really important to have some extra security because you are venturing into no man's land in some pretty remote areas. Of course, if you're going to be traveling on the Alcan through Canada up to Alaska, traveling with others is always a good idea. Just like hiking, you don't want to hike alone. And if you're going to be taking on the risk of traveling the Alcan, one of the things that many people do is they caravan, which is just going with other RVers, and that way you'll have support if you break down. It's a whole lot safer. If your vehicle breaks down, worst case scenario, you can leave it, jump in somebody else's, and get to safety. Because let's face it, out there in no man's land, there's a lot of wildlife and there's a lot of exposure to the elements, and some bad things can happen out there. So it's a good idea to travel with friends. Now, if you're not brave enough to entertain taking the Alcan, but you want to go up to Alaska, let me say this. The Alcan has beautiful scenery. Driving through Canada, it's all about the journey, not so much the destination of Alaska, although Alaska is wonderful. But if you have to be in Alaska for a job or something and you want to avoid the risk of going on the Alcan, you can have your RV ferried to Alaska. And like we said in the beginning with the news, they do have some special discounts for RVers now. And if you are going up there for a job, many times the deal is that the company that hired you will pay for your shipping cost so long as you honor your contract and work the entire season. So keep that in mind. If something doesn't work out, you decide to leave early, you're going to be on the hook for that shipping. But the Alaska Marine Highway system is a great way to bypass all those rough roads. Generally, the ferries will charge you by the length. So the longer your RV, the more that you are going to pay. And you want to make sure that you measure your rig accurately so that you're not paying unnecessarily. If you have a 26-foot trailer and you tell them it's a 30-foot trailer, you will be paying unnecessarily for footage that you don't have. That's where a little Class B camper van might be a lot better in that scenario. Now, one thing that I've heard about these ferry trips, I have not done it. Angie and I have not put an RV on the ferry. But keep this in mind, too. You're going to put your RV on the ferry, and you will likely not be able to use it for the duration of the ferry ride. So it's not like you're going to be sleeping in your RV. They don't allow that. You'll have to either rent a cabin or rough it and sleep in the coach section on the ferry, in the seats. But there's some liability issues, and they do not allow you to use your RV, especially cook on it and that kind of thing. I've also heard this. If you have pets, they do stay in the RV, and I believe that there is like twice a day. It's something kind of unreasonable. You have to keep them in your RV, and you're only allowed to go down there twice a day to let them out for 15 minutes at a time or something like that. So it's rough, man. If you've got pets, it might not be a good option at all. I don't think I would feel comfortable leaving our dogs in the RV for, 23 and a half hours a day. That seems excessive to me. Maybe other people are of differing opinions. And, these are things that I've heard in conversation, so it's important to do your due diligence and research this. But I know that was one of the red flags, and one of the reasons that I said, yeah, we probably would never do that, because you have to book that cabin if you want to sleep in a bed. You're not allowed to sleep in the RV, and the pet issue. So let's talk a little bit about overseas shipping. If you are heading somewhere other than Alaska or, a bordering country that you can just drive right into, you may be tempted to ship your RV, whether that be to Europe or Australia or something like that. And there are some things to consider when you're going to do that. First of all, it can be really expensive. So you have to balance these things out. You got to make sure your registration and your insurance is going to be good wherever you're going. Also, make sure that your insurance is going to cover the unit while it's being shipped, because that might require a whole different policy. So it's important to check with your insurance provider and ask them, hey, will my comprehensive and full coverage cover the RV while it's in transit to some other country? And then we talked about the driver's license thing. Most countries will allow you to drive on a United States driver's license for a limited amount of time before they expect you to get their country's driver's license. Now, shipping rates can vary widely, so you got to do your homework. Where are you going? If you're shipping your RV to Australia, it's likely to be more expensive than if you're shipping your RV to Hawaii. Now, why you would ship an RV to Hawaii unless it's like a little Class B camper van, I'm not exactly sure. Hawaii roads aren't really built for big rigs, that's for sure. Another option that you might entertain if you want to avoid some of the high freight costs of shipping your RV and all the headaches that come with it is just flying to that country, or even taking like a off-season cruise, a repositioning cruise, they call it, to that country. And then once you get there, rent an RV. And that is hugely popular. People from Europe and Asia and Australia oftentimes come to the United States and rent a camper van or an RV, and they tour the United States. The same is true for us Americans as we go abroad. There is the option to rent camper vans and RVs and tour those countries. I know one of the bucket list items for Angie and I is to go over to the northern UK, Scotland, Ireland, North England, and rent a camper van there and just go see all the things that we haven't seen, because we've been to South England quite a bit, but have not ventured very far north, and we really would love to see Scotland, we both have never been there, and be able to explore Ireland a little more than just stopping off at the Shannon Airport. So over there in Europe, and this will be true in many countries, you kind of need to do your research, and you will likely be influenced to rent a smaller RV than you would here in the US of A with our great, huge, wide roads. So drivability is going to be exaggerated in your considerations in other countries because oftentimes those roads will be narrower, and it's just something to think about, so maybe trade a little living space for a little less stressful travel days. Also, Australia and New Zealand have great rental markets with plenty of established campgrounds. Now, over in Europe, campground fees are really high compared to the United States. They have plenty of campgrounds, but looking ahead at that and planning for some higher camping costs is important in Europe because they do not have nearly the amount of free camping that we do here in the United States. Another consideration when you're thinking about renting or even shipping your RV and RVing abroad is that driving rules are going to be completely different. So even learning how to drive a Honda Civic in the United Kingdom, where you're driving on the wrong side of the road, is going to be stressful. Now add a big rig to that, and you've just amplified that stress. So think about that. Maybe it's a good idea to go over once, stay in hotels or at a resort or something like that, rent a car, and at least learn the rules of the road in a little European Matchbox car before you try to drive a big rig. Cities and towns are not designed for big rigs in Europe and many places across the world. So some things to think about, and maybe even opt for that smaller camper van rather than a towed rig or something like that. So before hitting the road internationally, make sure that your cell phone plan covers data wherever you're going. Remember that. And also any SIM cards that you need to purchase in order to be able to use your cell phone and your Wi-Fi hotspots. Those are important for staying connected and being able to navigate and also book campgrounds and the like. Well, guys, I hope I shed some light on some considerations that you might take while you're planning an RV trip abroad. It can be a lot of fun. Now, it's not always the most affordable option. It's likely one of the ones that you will be able to see things that most tourists would not. So that's pretty cool, being able to kind of get ingrained in the local culture and maybe spend a little bit more time in places for a little bit cheaper. And it's the same concept as RVing in the United States. The longer you stay somewhere in an RV, the more cost effective it becomes when compared to hotel stays and resort stays and so forth. I think the cruise thing has it beat by a long shot as far as the economy of it all. It's hard to beat the budget economy, cost per night of a cruise. But when you take a cruise, you likely will be kind of relegated to seeing only those coastal areas. So it's important to think about that. Don't forget to visit therestlessnomads.com for more episodes. Check out our blogs there. Our most recent exciting adventures. We are getting ready to go up to Crescent Lake. On May 14th, we'll begin our job up there at Crescent Lake here in Oregon. And if all goes to plan and the snow clears out, it's going to be really exciting to host that. And I'm super excited because that's an hour and a half away from Klamath Falls. So we'll drive the trailer up there. I'll turn right back around, come home, and pick up our boat. And we'll have our boat all summer long right there at Crescent Lake for some awesome fishing. We've been watching our fishing videos and also listening to Terrible at Fishing with Michael Ruffino on Friday nights, making sure that we can get spun up and we know what we're doing before we start casting our lines in the water. Well, until next time, y'all, safe travels and happy camping. You've been listening to the Restless Nomads RV radio show on Gold Country Radio. We'll see you next week. This is Mike, out.